Hello everyone, my name is D3 Damage and Momel, the goat of Open, bringing you Open Aries! And I want to talk to y'all about the cursing and blessings of Open Uma, the experimentation and cooking involved that made this video very, very late. Alright, so first off, let's do a little bit of a set review here, yeah? One, as always, Track Blazer's out. Y'all know what that means. I better hope you see some S's and S pluses and SS's because that means it's time for a new high score. And it means that you better be getting your team trials in order. Now, as you all know, it's not that I hate graded. I just think that you shouldn't do graded all the time, right? Like, it just takes too much effort. It takes time away from making your team trial stuff even better, because a lot of times team trials Uma are very specific. You can't really use the same stuff that's used in graded stuff at all. And on top of that, it just takes too much work. Right? It's not worth it. Versus Open, which routinely you just don't really need to work that hard at all to make a fairly competitive Uma. Right, more than once, I've done 2 runs or less to make a 90% win rate happen in Open. Right, if I can do it, you definitely can, with your much better cards, right? So with that in mind, one of the things that I need to eyeball is what you need to hit, right? Again, as always, you need to think about no one really knows what you need to open. Anyone who tells you that they know for sure is lying to you. We're going to show a bunch of different examples today of stuff that has already won in testing rooms, okay? But for graded, we do know, right? In graded, you need max speed, max power, max wit, enough speed, enough stamina, enough guts. Distance S, turf S. You need it, right? If you don't have it, you're trolling, right? Especially because it's not, especially with Track Blazer out, the ceiling has exploded, right? People were talking about how oh well, you might see some UG Uma, but they're gonna have random trash skills. No, they don't, right? I found this hot shot model density here that has literally the perfect skills, right? They don't have anything they can't use. It's medium corners, medium straightaways, front runner corners, front runner straightaways, etc., etc. They don't have a single dead skill. This is your competition in graded. This is what you're going to have to beat consistently and routinely. Good freaking luck. There's a reason I don't touch graded anymore. Especially with Track Blazer being such a reliable source of Open Uma, I was kind of startled by this, right? I didn't expect that Track Blazer, of all things, would be the thing that finally pulled me out of URI finale. I thought for sure just the sheer number of races you had to do would make that you had to do. Oh, you don't have to do a bunch of races. In fact, the number of races that they recommend you do for graded is extreme overkill for Open. You could do 5 or 6 races per year and get by just fine. Huh. Interesting. And so it ends up meaning you can actually be very, very reliable on your stats. You can very reliably get the skills you want. And sometimes the races will just give you extra stuff anyways because you beat a rival while you were doing it. It's actually really incredible for just making some really good Open Uma every single time. I've yet to make an Uma that's not competitive off of Track Blazer. It's very entertaining. That's part of why this is so late, by the way. I had to do a lot of math to be confident in, what I was going to be presenting to y'all. And I had to do a lot of stuff that, well, I'm proud of it, but at the same time, it just took time, right? It took time, it took measurements, it took some cooking, okay? Which kind of leads me to the title of this video, right? I'm not saying that Open's better all the time, right? I will, in fact, argue that Open is just as hard and graded in some ways, and that, you have to know what you're doing, right? Especially because in Open, there's no issue to cook with this. You are your chef in Open, right? I'm trying to do my best to spread the word for the community, right? So that more people can enjoy Open. But the truth is, I'm basically by myself, right? Every other content creator is doing graded and graded only. If they do Open, it's a single video, and they don't do it for every CM. And on top of that, if they do mention Open at all, it's usually with tones of fear, right, or disgust, right? They're don't you dare touch Open, unless you become a filthy min-maxer, as if they aren't min-maxing the shit out of themselves right now to get those UG Uma with R cards. Definitely not, guys. Alright, with that being said, some of the advice is still the same between the grade and the Omen stuff, right? It's still right-handed, Nakayama standard, yada yada yada, right? All that stuff is still the same, right? So you don't need to worry about that. And I'll be frank, when I saw this stuff, I kind of thought the same things that all the graded people thought, right? About who was going to be good, namely Christmas Oguri. We're going to come back to that. For now, let's talk about what the best installments are, where you get your greens, viable accelerations, the single best gold in the game on every medium racetrack, the current stat line and points values I've seen be winning, a demonstration of some stat lines with skills for the different racing styles, and then a general viable list of Uma, followed by should you run Christmas Oguri and some team comps that I think are worth mentioning. Part of why I want to focus on team comps a little bit more this time around is because this is actually a pretty volatile CM, and it might not look like it at first glance, right? But it turns out, when you enter into open in this CM, you can't guarantee anything. Uh, there's no fast track to victory. In a lot of ways, you're gambling basically no matter what you do. So you gotta choose what type of gambling you want to be better at fighting, is essentially what you want to be thinking about here. So let's start with the first elephant. The three queens of Open Uma this CM. They are going to be Major Orion, Major Odober, and Sand Sty. Please make sure that where possible, your Uma are borrowing one of these parents so that you can get a very, very nice ultimate proc. It turns out the late race starts on a corner, and that means that these three love it. It's a little bit too deep for like Monozensky, Nishino Flower, or Taiki Shuttle, right? Just a little bit too deep for them. But that doesn't mean they're individually awful, it's just they're not as good this CM as they would be normally. Although I will say that Taiki Shuttle and Nishino Flower in particular are really, really bad this CM. Do not use them even as their own Uma. You're probably going to lose a couple runs. Although Monozensky, we're not talking about Redshift Monozensky. There's a conversation to have there. All right, as always, Velocity Inheriteds are nice, right? Like, you're never upset to get a good Velocity Inherited. They are cheaper than any white skill or gold skill that you're going to, and they still provide a very, very similar bonus. So there's nothing wrong with just saying, yeah, you know what, I just want a efficient Velocity skill. That'd be totally okay. Now, why do we care about efficiency? Well, that's everything in open, right? Like, there is a points cap, you have to fit under the points cap, and so anything that helps you fit under the points cap is really, really good, which is part of why we're going to specifically mention greens. And I know I talk about this every CM, but I'm going to make sure I drill it into everyone's heads. You need greens. Greens are good. Eat yo greens. They are efficient. Starting at 500 points, whatever stat you're pumping into is efficient. That means every stat the CM, except guts, is a good stat to buy a green for. Every single one. Now, with that in mind, I'm slowly coming around to the idea that more people need to respect, in particular, Zeno Rob Roy. I think if you're going to do open, Zeno Rob Roy is worth using a selector ticket on a 0 LB copy. That's how strongly I feel about Rob Roy. Because she does something that's pretty unique. She gives you the option of either right-handed or left-handed every single CM. That is invaluable and impossible to replicate. Especially because she also gives you Nimble Navigator, which means you have so many strong options and ways to use this particular card on so many Uma. I think you could run her every CM, and I've started to. The ability to choose right or left-handed on a chain event, by the way, meaning it's incredibly likely to see, is amazing. If you still have your selector ticket and you don't have Zeno Rob Roy, I can absolutely recommend spending a selector ticket on Rob Roy. I wouldn't recommend this though if you're hopping between graded and open a lot. Like if you're only doing open as like a rest stop and you don't want to be doing graded most of the time, I wouldn't recommend it. But I can say that you probably also at that point have a Zeno Rob Roy lying around more than likely from some other pull that you were doing that was super important. Don't be afraid to use her. She's quite good for open. The other notable ones are, of course, the free-to-play options. The Measure of Bright's stamina is okay. I'm not personally a fan of using stamina cards this CM. It's a very short medium track, but it would be okay. Beyond that, though, I think the best options are definitely Find Motion and Narita Bryan, because everyone has Narita Bryan, and Find Motion is just an incredibly powerful card. Again, that also provides Nimble Navigator, just like Zeno Rob Roy does. Now, if you're going for standard distance because you want to just improve your stamina a little bit, I do think this is really a not late surger thing. Late surgers can probably get away without this extra chunk of stamina. I've seen them get away with some pretty absurdly low numbers. Also, Christmas Oguri. Christmas Oguri tends to pack on so many white skills that she just kind of doesn't need the extra stamina. But for everyone else, I think this is a pretty good pick. I think this is a second best in slot. I would definitely prefer the speed that you get from right-handed over this, but if you can get both, hey, why not? Also, Nisho Flower Power is going to come up again later. We're going to talk about that for firm conditions. But yeah, this is pretty standard, right? Nakayama Racecourse. This one's a little bit tougher because a lot of the cards that come, it's really just it's because Yukino Bijin, right? It's just Bijin. that provides this, and it's also a good card. Now, you could also talk about Nakayama Festa, but Nakayama Festa is a little bit less ideal because she doesn't give a ton of things that we want, and also she's a stamina card, which we don't really need. And then this isn't a mild track, so you don't really want to be running Oguri Cap at all. And unless you're a late surge, you probably don't want to be running Guts Grass Wonder. So really, that means the only viable option is Yukino Bijin here. Especially Wit Bijin. Wit Bijin giving no stopping me is very strong, especially because very few Uma have no stopping me natively. So if you're not Kawakami Princess, then, you know, you don't have to worry about this, but like basically everyone else like would love this, right? Spring Runner. So this is a bit of a devil to get, right? There are some Uma, very notably Kia-san Black and Meijiro McQueen, who have this natively, but no one else that you care about does. I guess you could argue that Sakura Chiyono O is okay, right? Spring Spectacle is quite a powerful green skill, but we're talking about how you share this with other Uma, right? And how other Uma get this. And really that means that there are only two options, because most of you don't have her card for Sakura Chiyono O. You have Inari 1 Power or R or Common Meijiro McQueen Stamina. I've run both and found that it is pretty possible to get Spring Runner if you run both, but both of them have a pretty low chance to give you Spring Runner. It's a little tough. I think you could be forgiven for skipping out on Spring Runner and going for something else instead that's a little bit more consistent. No one would blame you. They have a lot of hints possible on their cards, and so it's just a bit of a pain to get them from either one. And so if you want it, you're probably running both, and that's also like puts a strain on your action economy, right? So pick your poison. Now, if you want things that don't put a strain on your action economy, Firm Conditions is actually a pretty easy one to get. It's on a lot of really powerful cards that can fit into a lot of different playstyles, and I find that very refreshing. Naria Top Road notably comes with Firm Horse Menace, which I'm not sure I recommend. It's a little bit expensive, but it is also a chain event, so it's a lot more likely to happen than all the other ones here, right? I will also say that, again, Nishino Flower Power has come up again, right? It also gives you standard distance, so there is a very good argument that, like, if you're trying to run a front runner, Nishino Flower Power is a very good card to run if you're not going to aim for the Spring Runner event, because she can save you slots and pump up your race bonus to make Track Blazer even more efficient. Another one that's actually pretty notable is actually, believe it or not, Winning Ticket Power. I highlight this one because everyone has Winning Ticket Power, right? It's one of the free-to-play options, right? Just by doing the story events, you'll eventually get this card no matter what account you're on. And so if you don't have any of the other ones, I can guarantee you have with the Winning Ticket one if you just play through the story mode, which, hey, don't do that. It's a good story. Enjoy yourself. All right, Sunny Days. As always with the guts boosters, I mean, it's better than nothing, right? Like, it's definitely the emergency green, and I don't recommend taking it if you don't need greens, unless you're in a guts build. If you're doing a guts build, then great, take the green. It's efficient. It's good, right? Notably, though, there is one card I have no problem recommending, even with Sunny Days, like kind of low power being kept in mind. That is El Condor Pasa Power. Now, you probably know this already, but El Condor Pasa Power provides killer tunes, and it also provides standard distance. So it gives you 2 greens and a very, very good gold. Heck, why not, you know? Alright, now time to talk about viable excels. So as always with excels, you probably are looking at a 20% excel. A 40% excel is probably overkill a lot of the time. Not because you can't use the excel, but because most of the time you just don't have the max speed required to really get the most out of that 40% excel. Like, you're probably capping out in like the 800 to 900 range on most Uma. A couple of your Uma might squeeze out like 1,000 or 1,000, even 1,200 if you're especially psychopathic. But since I don't think that's going to be very common, I think a lot of the times 20% is going to be good enough. Also, No Stopping Me, the gold version of Nimble Navigator, is very expensive and very difficult to get without also sacrificing your green count, unless you take, again, Yukino Bijin Wit. So keep that in mind. That being said, if you are going to run this Nimble Navigator and Right-Handed are on both Zeno Rob Roy and on Fine Motion here. So I would definitely recommend getting either of those, or both. Hey, who knows? Now, Head-On. Head-On's a little bit tougher. It's PlayStation only, right? Oh, and obviously, Oh, I should probably mention that, huh? Okay, so Nimble Navigator goes on everyone who's not a frontrunner, right? But even then, if you have a frontrunner who's deliberately meant to be played from third place, and there are a couple of those that we aren't going to mention, Redshift Mountain Intensity, but keep that in mind. Head On is very, very Pace Chaser coded because it's a Pace Chaser only still. So that means I don't know if you run this card, to be honest. Like, yeah, you can get Head On off of the Christmas card here for my auto Top Gun. But I feel like you probably just want to run the Uma that can get this regardless, so you probably just want to run Daiwa Starlet. There's a good argument for not doing Daiwa Starlet as a pace chaser and doing Daiwa as a front runner anyway, so I'm not sure how good it is to get this. But if you probably have at the very least the event power card for a special week, so if you want to run a pace chaser, might as well, right? In that same vein, we have Slick Surge. Slick Surge is everywhere. It's not like Head On. Head On is very rare. Slick Surge is super common. You're going to find out a bunch of cards that are very easy to get. Again, notably, we're looking at Winning Ticket Power as a very, very notable free card that everyone has that also provides you with firm conditions. As always, we love our greens down and open, so I think this is a very good card to run if you don't have anything better to run. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the single best gold skill in the game for medium skills, Dominator. We call them the four horse girls of the Dominators, right? We got Rudolph, classic Rudolph specifically, Valentine Flash, Grass Wonder, and Agnes Tachyon. These four are the only source in the game right now of Dominator. It is a fat 3-second speed debuff of 25% of their current speed to all enemy girls in front of your current position. It's very good. I have absolutely lost. If I have to talk about what I've lost the most to, it is double Dominator and triple Dominator teams are the single most common loss condition for my own Uma. In fact, it's so good that I'm contemplating just running my own double Dominator / Oshi lineup. I'm going to be making that today, in fact, because I think it's so strong that you just don't need a lot of help to slap this thing together. It's a very, very powerful build, regardless of how you set it up. It just nets you so many lengths, and it gets you so many girls, and it just makes so many other game plans possible. Right? Like, you'll hear people talk about Christmas Oguri builds, but really a lot of those Christmas Oguri builds are actually double Dominator builds that are using Christmas Oguri because she's relatively independent of your other Uma and doesn't need other Uma to do her thing. That's why she tends to be actually good, not because her skills are particularly strong. Oh, and before I forget, remember, don't do Unity Cup, okay? There's one exception, and there's only one exception for Unity Cup. But most of the time, Unity Cup just has this nasty habit of you don't do all this effort, right, to set up your greens, and then you just literally can't find them, right? They're hidden behind fireballs, and because you're hidden, you don't even bother to check, or if you do check, you're wasting time, right? Like, it's not great. It's not great. Skip it. Now, Tug of War. As always, if you're familiar with my videos, you know that there's not really a clean answer on whether you should go for, like, more stats but fewer skills, or fewer stats but more skills. There's not really a clean answer, but in general, on longer CMs, and yes, even though this is a 2,000 meter medium, so one of the shorter mediums we're ever going to do, I still think of it as a longer CM. I think stats are more valuable. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to cram as much stats as you can into your Uma, and then only take, like, certain specific skills. Now, here's a good baseline for you. 875 speed, 745 stamina, 812 power, 319 guts, 590 wit, with a level 1 unique skill. I do think it's possible to do this in Trackblazer. How do I explain it? So in Trackblazer, what you do is you never click on a G1, you try and do the minimum number races or only one more. In Classic Year, try and stay under 60k fans, and in Senior Year, try and stay under 100k fans. And you can basically guarantee the stat line and guarantee the unique skill level. It's very, very easy. It's incredibly simple to pull off. Everyone can do it on any Uma that they have that's a 3-star Uma. Also, this stat line, let's talk about it. So, it has good speed, good power, good wit. I think there's an argument for sacking stamina. I have seen some Uma that have gotten away with 690 stamina. All of them are end closers and late surgers, though. So if you're not an end closer or late surger, you're probably going to want a little bit more. Bear in mind, this is a little bit high. It is banking on the idea that you're gonna get rushed, or that there's like a stamina debuffer, because this is a medium, so stamina debuffers do show up sometimes. So you will notice that if you don't have this much stamina, but someone does bring a stamina debuffer, you probably gas out at least some of the time. So keep that in mind. You can run at least one Uma with less stamina than this, like in the 650 range, but you are running the risk that you just like gas out because someone hit you with a debuff. Now let's talk about examples. Uh, Now, the most common pace chaser you're probably going to run into is probably Christmas Oguri, plus whatever Oshi people have, which is often Oguri cap anyways. Christmas Oguri is, we have to talk about her later, but you'll notice that, like, these particular examples stand out on stamina really hard. The Christmas Oguri has to, because she has a bunch of white recoveries built that she needs for her ult to work, and her ult is also a recovery, so she will cut her stamina quite a bit in order to get underneath. Now, I saw this particular Oguri cap win once, but whenever I watched them again, I never saw them win again, and I strongly suspect it's because of the stamina issues. Because 622 stamina is not enough on a pace chaser. It just isn't, I'm sorry. So keep that in mind that, like, of these two, the one on the right definitely won more than the one on the left. Congratulations, Kelvin. Alright, now Late Surgers. Late Surgers is a little bit of an Oshi pick. You can kind of throw in whoever the heck you want, because when you're making a Late Surger, you're just making a gambler, right? You're saying, you know what, I'm going to grab Let's Pump Some Iron, or No Stopping Me, or Slick Surge, or Moving Past and Beyond, or all of the above, and you're just going to see what sticks, right? You're making an acceleration Uma that can scam out on stamina, have a high speed, and just go for it. 730 to 630 have all been winners, right? I've seen all three of these win. Notably, this Tosin Jordan from Johnny has won several times, so I'm personally of the opinion that No Stopping Me is actually a very, very good gold this CM. And I think there's a lot of reasons to swing for it if you want to, especially if you're running a Late Surger, because if you're running a Late Surger, you're going to need the Excel. And the closers. Now, I know in graded they're not very popular. In graded, they don't win. But this isn't graded. This is open. A lot of the reasons that like end closer struggle just don't exist, right? You could just take No Stopping Me on the end closer anyways, and you can just take Moving Past Beyond and Let's Pump Some Iron on the end closer anyways, especially Gold Chip, right? Gold Chip in particular just does not care that quote unquote end closers are bad and will just win anyways. Also, notably, putting her as an end closer makes it more likely you'll proc your ult, and it also makes it more likely that you're going to be behind any powerful late surges that come up, so you'll probably hit 6th place better than they will. It's going to be pretty fun, right? And as always, whenever you're playing open, remember that gold chip is the gold standard. Your goal is to make a gold chip that gets at least 33%, and that is your average UMA in open, right? So if you're doing better than that, you're doing phenomenal. Okay, frontrunners. Frontrunners are weird, and we're going to talk about that more later. I've seen some fairly strange stat lines win. Everything from this very low speed 799 Daiwa Scarlet, right? 859 if you count her greens, which you should, all the way up to this like 956 Mihono Bourbon, or this, and I quote myself here, 1,150 speed Maruzenski. This is probably the group that has the most dynamic variation of stats I've seen and still win. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later when we get to triple front sections for team comps. But suffice to say, there is a lot of good you can do by running a frontrunner in the CM. Frontrunners are very, very strong because of angling and steaming being very, very strong. You'll notice, unlike the last time, unlike these other categories, like if I show you the end closers, not every end closer has Moving Past and Beyond. Not every late surger has Let's Pump Some Iron, but every single frontrunner has angling and steaming. It's the only viable excel that they have this CM, and it's a very, very good one that's almost guaranteed to proc if you're in first place on the start of the late race. It's a very, very powerful skill. So let's talk about who's viable in general. As always, whenever I talk about open, I think I talk about the ease of use. And so as long as you hit medium aptitude D or better and then turf A, I think you have a viable UMA, right? Figure it out, find who your Oshi is, enjoy yourself. You can make it work. Aptitude E is possible, but then you start to limit yourself on like what is doable. You need a very good 9-star mom plus at least one more star. Or really just some combination of 10 stars to make go from E to A. It is doable, but it is a pain in the butt, so I don't recommend it for everybody. But but if you can do it, then go for it. That means that you have a very fat list of people to pull from. So let's talk about avoiding burnout too before we go on, right? The only Uma on this list of 5 that I actually recommend taking anyway sometimes is Sakura Bakushino. If you can make a Sakura Bakushino that has medium A or medium S, you have a very powerful Uma on your hands for the CM as a frontrunner. Again, we'll go over why later in the double front X Dominator section, but either way, please avoid burnout. The whole point of my guides is to make things easy for you. The whole point of open is to like lower the stress level. Don't let open stress you out. Please, please, please reduce your cortisol. Right? Enjoy yourself. Now, major elephant in the room, Christmas Oguri. I saw the same thing that every graded content creator saw. That 777s happens right before the late race. That within 3 to 4 seconds, your Uma will hit the late race. She will have some carryover velocity and also have some carryover excel. She's very, very strong with CM. Just like she is in every CM, in theory. Whenever there's a good recovery spot for her ultimate to proc at a very right before the late race. But I need you all to understand something. I've learned my lesson from previous experience, right? That like you can't just take the word of the graded content creators directly as is, right? You gotta understand that like whatever they suggest to you has to be tested, right? And so I did. So I said, you know what? Let's just buckle up a little bit. I'm gonna grab some random medium Uma that I've already prepared. I'm just gonna throw them at the wall and see how they do. Wait a minute. This is a random fucking Madazensky. A redshift Madazensky. A redshift Madazensky, her ult shouldn't work and shouldn't be proccing. Surely it happens too late. What the heck is going on? How did she get second? What in the world? Huh? And part of me was like, oh, I just cooked really well. But again, I've learned my lesson from vast experience. This sort of stuff requires testing. You gotta repeat the experiment a couple of times before you really know what's happening, right? And so I said, okay, well, let's check out what happens in other races. How often does Christmas Oguri win? And what is she losing to? And I found that a non-0% of the time, in fact, more than half of the time, 2/3 of the time even, Christmas Oguri routinely fails to even make it into the top 3, let alone the top... Hell, a lot of times she doesn't even make it into the top 5, which is bizarre, to say the least. And who she's losing to in particular is notable. More than once, she's losing to random super creeps that I made for long CMs. What gives, guys? What's going on? Cause like, again, this is the demon of graded. This is the Uma that is like everyone's most favorite target to discuss. This is the Uma that if you ask them who they're scared of, it's Christmas Oguri. There's even bounty boards on the official Discord of people offering to pay you hard cash money every time you beat a Christmas Oguri. And those people owe me a couple $100 at this point, because frankly, I'm folding most of the Oguris I run into. Not all of them, and we're going to talk about that more later. I don't think Christmas Oguri is a fraud or anything like that, but I will point out to you that the random redshift Madazensky, quote-unquote, the Uma whose ult doesn't work, quote-unquote, still beats this random, very powerful Oguri cap that looks like basically every other Oguri cap out there. And I mean it when I say that, right? Like, every Oguri cap basically falls into one of a couple different flavors. First flavor, triple recovery, let's go gambling. Triple recovery is very, very gambly. You have, with 600 stat wit, you have 80% chance to proc each individual stat, right? And when you have an 80% chance to proc, here's what I need you to understand. You have to proc all 3 for her ult to go off, which means any given interaction or any given race in the CM, this particular Oguri cap only has a 51% chance to have an ult at all, right? So if any of her skills don't proc, right? If corner recovery, hydrate, 777s doesn't proc, she just loses, right? And the same is true of basically these other 2, except that, oh wait, they have 4 white recoveries. So now they're a lot more reliable. Their odds of proccing a 3 out of their 4 whites is something like 90-ish something percent, but now they're giving up on valuable stats in order to make it to that stat line, right? You'll notice the numbers on this Oguri cap are bigger than the numbers on the other Oguri caps for the most part, right? Why is that? Well, like, just have more room here, right? And they're able to just put in a little bit more skills. So, what gives? Like, how come we're seeing this happen? Well, I think she's running into the same problem that Immortal runs into in Invincible, the Prime Amazon show. Immortal would be incredibly strong if he was in a different environment, but in the current environment of Invincible, the show, Immortal is quite weak. He's a fraud, quote unquote. And I think the same is true of Oguri Cap. In graded, Oguri Cap is incredible because you could have max wit, max power, max speed, and a shit ton of skills that don't cost you anything, right? You can just keep pumping the number higher and higher and higher. But there's a hard limit on what you can do for Oguri Cap in open, right? If you look at this chart off to my right, you'll notice if your chance of proccing 3 out of 4 golds, or is the same. Okay, I should clarify. The odds for proccing 3 out of 4 golds is the exact same as proccing 3 out of 4 whites, so it's the same chart no matter what, right? So even with 3 out of 4, if you're at 300 wit, which is a lot of these Oguri caps I have seen are at, you only have a 65%-ish chance to proc. And even with more wit, it only goes up to like 84 to 85, maybe 90%-ish chance, right, with more wit. And you can only shove in so much wit before you're sacrificing other stats. Because you have to sacrifice things, in a lot of ways what I've noticed is that Oguri Cap comps, yes, Oguri Cap is strong, but really these comps are actually Dominator comps, is what they actually are, right? More often than not, the Oguri Caps that do beat me, or that do win, that whenever I slap them together, they almost always are backed up by double Dominator. It's not the Oguri Cap herself that's winning. I think any Uma could win, and I've seen any Uma win. I must make a discussion now about, I think this is a great time to talk about composition and your team comp. Yes, Christmas Oguri can do a good job as a double Dominator plus Oguri Cap, but you can really run anybody, right? I've seen Fuji Kuseki's win, I've seen Tosin Jordan's win. As long as it's a pace chaser, right, you will have a double Dominator comp that is successful. Now, why double Dominator? Well, the reason is actually pretty straightforward. You gotta remember that, like, you're competing with other Uma, right? One of the biggest problems that you're going to run into is that, like, when you look at a frontrunner needs another frontrunner in order to work, right? You must have 2 frontrunners for any frontrunner to be successful, because you need to be able to guarantee that she'll be able to duel with somebody to build as much distance as possible. So a frontrunner doesn't work. And a late surger runs the very real risk that your dominators cause them to freaking explode, right? There's a non-zero chance that whatever, if you run a late surger, they just get caught up on whatever your dominators have knees have shot, right? And then because they're caught up, they don't win, right? So it's usually much safer to run a pace chaser over a late surger or frontrunner or edge closer as your third Uma in a double dominator comp. And again, Christmas Oguri is great for that. I will say that if you want to run the most powerful possible option, Christmas Oguri is pretty good with 4 recoveries. She's very reliable at that point. She's not perfect. She isn't like something like Fuji Kuseki, who just will probably proc it almost no matter what. But she is still strong, so keep that in mind. And then, a lot of times I lost to look something like this, right? This is the Dominator that they're running. The Dominators in this comp don't need to win, so they're routinely built with extra debuffs in mind. Things like Flustered Pace Chasers, Hesitant Pace Chasers, stuff like that. Like, they go out of their way to pack a lot of debuffs onto two different Uma. And their main goal isn't to win, it's to make sure that everyone else loses. And then they let their whatever their third character is, whether it's Meisho Dodo or Oguri Cap or Daiwa Starlet, it doesn't really matter who it is. As long as it's a Pace Chaser, they'll probably have a good shot at winning. Now, you've probably seen me flash it a couple of times now. The next most common build that you're probably going to run into and should probably consider at least a little bit is Triple Dominator. Now, this is the idea behind Triple Dominator. You don't need to be the best Uma in the lobby if everybody else is being eaten by a bear, right? You just gotta run faster than the guy that's next to you, not faster than the fastest person in the lobby, right? And that's really easy to do when everyone's had their legs chopped off. Now, it is worth noting that if you run a Triple Dominator, it must be specifically Ace and Flash, Symbolic Rudolph, and Grass Wonder. You notice this is not Grass Wonder. This is because no one that I saw running it was using Grass Wonder, but I think that's a mistake. Realistically, if you want to make a very good Dominator, Dominator only procs if you're in 6th place or worse. So 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th can all proc Dominator. And if you're taking a triple Dominator comp, you want to take advantage of your Dominators. There is an argument that if you run a Agnes Tachyon, she'll fall behind, and then she will proc she'll proc Dominator late, but realistically, you kind of want all of your Uma in triple Dominator to win, right? You want all of them to have a chance at winning. So they all need some kind of excel, they all need good stats that aren't just slamming home wit as hard as you can, and they need other skills to help them compete, right? It is required. So if you are going to do a double Dominator build, or triple Dominator build, it should look something like this, right? Where you have these two, Symbolic Wolf and Valentine Flash, and then Grass Wonder because she's just better at running into this type of comp. Now, triple backliners. So this could be either Midro Dober, Midro Ryan, and then your favorite Oshi, Midro Dober, Midro Ryan, and then your favorite Dominator. But whatever you do, keep in mind, you're basically just gambling. You are doing the hardest gamble of your life because no matter what, you're just hoping against hope that you end up in 6th place. Right at the start, right when the late race hits, right? Like that's your hope and dream. So that's your everything. If you don't hit it, then you don't hit, and your race is just over. And you have 3 chances to do it, and other people know that you have 3 chances to do it. It's pretty funny seeing like an all late surger lobby pop up because then you have no freaking idea who's gonna win. It's just whichever one lucks into being in the back of the pack at the right time, which is very, very funny. Now, why these two? Most of the time, you should understand that because these two have the 40% version of their own ults, you should run at least one of them, and I do recommend running both. Especially if one of them is your Oshi, but even without them being your Oshi, running both of them just means you have more odds of hitting the best possible version of your ult, and it is the best possible version of your ult that you're looking for. The 40% matters a lot, and this is what a couple of different versions look like. Some people lean a little bit more on raw stats, some people lean a little bit more on greens. It's up to you. I will mention specifically for open purposes that like if there are more mediums coming up, and in those cases, having a greenless run can mean that you are allowed to run this Uma again in the next CM. So that's potentially something to keep in mind if you do this strategy. Now, for other backliners, run whoever the heck you like. It could be a late surger, it could be an antiloser. It's really just whoever your Oshis are, okay? You could also run a third your third Uma as a Dominator, but most of the time I think it's better to just run a triple ace at that point, right? Like, you're not really committing to the Dominator strategy. You're really just slamming home and, like, saying, let's go gambling, let's go gambling, let's go gambling, and seeing who can win, right? And at that point, any Uma that has Left Flame Iron and Moving Past and Beyond can win, or Nimble Navigator, or Slick Surge, or etc., etc., etc. Like, you figure it out, right? Now, Double Front Dominator. This one, unfortunately, is very specific. While you're you might notice I have Bakushin, Valentine Bourbon, and Summoner Madazensky here, instead of, I don't know, the wall of Uma that I have for triple backliners, right? Why is that? Well, in this type of comp, you actually really badly need Uma who will fight for first place. They have to be very, very good at fighting for first place. They cannot just have an excel and hope to call it a day, right? Why? Well, you gotta remember, frontrunners are very strong this CM. Everyone knows frontrunners are strong because everyone has a dream. They want to see a Sandstyle ult proc and then fly off the ticket, right? That's what all of them want. And so, what happens when you have like a late start, or what happens when someone else has their Uma who has like a first or second proc order? What do? They win 9 times out of 10. So how do you stop them from winning? Well, you just need to have an Uma that doesn't need to be in first or second for her ult to proc. You know who that is? That is Valentine Bourbon, Summer Madazensky, and, of course, Sakura Bakushino. Those are the 3 best frontrunners to run in a double front comp. If you try and run Sandstyle Raw, and you can, it's not impossible, right? Like, yes, Sandstyle has the best ult she has the best version of this, right? She has 40% excel on her ult, because she herself is the ult owner. She has a lot of trouble fighting for first place. You'll have to figure out some way to get her there. And getting her there is definitely the problem in double fronts, because like if one of them has a late start and the other one didn't, and there's no other front runners, you just lose, right? So you really gotta figure out ways to like help push lead as hard as you can. Now, speaking of pushing the lead, we have triple front. I need y'all to look over here on this left side, this is a front, wedding air groove, front wedding air groove that has beaten out a Summer Malazensky and a Valentine Bourbon. When you are running triple front, you are gambling, but in a completely different way from triple late surgers. Triple late surgers are gambling that they will hit their excel. You are gambling on the type of comp your enemies are going to run into, because the different flavors of triple front are very good at fighting different flavors of opponent. Really, anyone with a good enough front and medium aptitude can do this, but you gotta know that you have to big brain your mind off in order to understand what exactly you're going to fight against and how you plan to beat it. There are so many different variations of opponents that you have that, unless you're Doctor Strange, this might be a very difficult type of build to run. Here's just some examples. Hey, did you know that Redshift Monotensity works? Did you know Daiwa Scarlet can win? Did you know that wedding? Again, this is a different race, by the way, right? Like, if you look at this is a different race from the last one, right? This is not a one-off win. The wedding air groove is actually one of my most consistent winners. Okay, why? We'll talk about more about her later. But it turns out that, like, the different types of frontrunners are good at dealing with different types of situations. There are some times where Daiwa Scarlet is the best frontrunner. There are some times where Redshift Monozensky is the best, or Summer Monozensky, or Valentine Bourbon, or Wedding Air Groove. Okay, you know what? Elephant in the room, Redshift. Redshift shouldn't work. I've had more than one person in, like, the different graded communities try and argue with me. They're like, no, Redshift doesn't work. It would proc too late. There's no way you could possibly hit max speed and win the... Well, she does, though. She does. Why? Well, it's actually not Redshift Monozensky herself. If it's just Redshift and it's just a plain lobby, she doesn't tend to win. The lobbies where she tends to win are the double Dominator and triple Dominator lobbies. What seems to be happening is that she gets nuked, so does every other frontrunner, but unlike every other frontrunner, she just says, whatever, eat my ult anyway, suckers. She ults after the Dominator's proc or during the Dominator proc and just gets back up to speed anyways. It's very, very funny. I don't think this is intended, and so I will say, if you run into a lot of if you want to run triple front and you run into a lot of double Dominator and triple Dominators, especially on round 2, you could consider running Redshift Monozensky, and she'll probably do very, very well. She certainly has for me, and it's one of the most absurd things to come out of this, right? Also, other elephant we have to address, Sanstai. You'll notice this is Redshift Monozensky getting first, and this is Sanstai getting 7th. Why? Well, I've kind of hinted at it already a couple of times, but the ability to fight for first is really, really important. In order to beat the other frontrunners, you have to be in front at the start of the late race. And unfortunately, in open, you don't have a lot of points to play with. You can skip out on greens and groundwork for a better mid-race, or you can take the greens and groundwork plus taking the lead, or you can take both. But if you take both, your stats suck. So you're in this really huge conundrum where, for the most part, what I found on Sanstai is that if you take her, if you run all the mid-race skills and the greens, you don't have enough raw stats in order to win. If you only run the greens plus groundwork and taking the lead, you don't have the mid-race to fight off other powerful mid-race frontrunners. And if you take both, you just don't. It's tough, right? It's tough. Now, I am going to say I have seen a single Sanstai win, but as far as I can tell, it was basically lucky front, for lack of a better word, where she just happened to taking the lead her way to victory, right? And I didn't have a fighting front at the time that could have stopped her. But if I ran into her with my fighting front, she'd probably lose. But if you see her and you don't have a fighting front, she probably wins. So, like, I wouldn't blame you for taking her. I do think there are some times where she's just the strongest Uma in the lobby. But there's other times where she gets 7th place and you're like, wait, why did my Redshift Monozensky win? Alright, speaking of which, we got one last... Hold on. Wait, no. Other elephant in the room. Wedding Air Groove. I didn't prepare a specific slide for Wedding Air Groove because it was a little bit too ridiculous, and I've run more tests since then, and she just keeps winning. I think what's happening is in a fighter comp, specifically a fighter comp, what happens is she hits third place at the start of the mid race, and then she pushes everyone else forward, kind of acting like a runaway Suzuka, where she just makes all the other front runners fly forward because they're trying to stay in front of her and fail. Or she is in the front early race and mid race, and then she hits third place in the start of the mid race, or right before. Sorry, not the start. Late. She hits third place right before the late race, and then explodes. Right. Uh, and then she gets carryover, and then she wins that way. She is startlingly consistent. I do think her slot would be better filled by a Sakura Bakushino, but I'm too lazy to make a medium S Bakushino, so it is what it is. Alright, one last comp that I think is worth mentioning. It's called the Runaway Dominator, otherwise known as OCX Christmas. This is a super duper uh, middle finger to the triple front runner build. If you run into this as triple front, you're probably going to lose. It is what it is. I'm sorry. Again, like I mentioned, triple front requires a lot of big brain hard think about what you're going to run into in a CM. Runaway turns off most front runners because it just gets in front and then wins the race. Or at the very least, it gets in front and turns off alien scheming, turning off the best Excel in the game for the front runners. So they just fall apart and lose, right? And then you have the Dominator in the back to make sure that they just don't pull that far ahead if they do get ahead, and to cuck any random Oguri that you see that isn't running a double Dominator, which is the other thing worth mentioning. This is a very rock paper scissors gameplay because it will just lose to double Dominator comps or triple Dominator comps because you just don't have multiple Oshi or multiple aces who can compete in case something goes wrong, right? You have fewer ways to get in front. And it looks really ridiculous, right? Like, here's an example from Ace Kitty, where they ran a Runaway, not even a full Dominator, just a random debuff for Rudolph, right? And then also had a Christmas Oguri as their primary ace. And they won, they beat me, but, if I was just running a double Dominator comp, they probably would have lost, right? Because you'll notice how tight the grouping is between, the Silent Suzuka, after the Silent Suzuka, right? Between the Rudolph and everyone else, right? Without the Suzuka turning off Alien Steaming, I probably would be in first place here, right? Or if they were dominated, they probably wouldn't have gotten that far anyways. So it's, pick your gamble, people. In conclusion, Open is very, very fun this CM, and I can highly recommend it. Trackblazer is out and super duper reliable, right? Please make sure to eat your greens. Do not stimp on stamina. It is possible to go too low unless you're a Oguri cap. Dominator is very, very good, and if you're struggling to win in Open, my biggest recommendation is to grab Grass Wonder and Agnes Tachyon, because I know you have them, throw them in the back line, and then pick your Oshi and then start winning. I promise you'll pick up wins at least some of the time. You'll probably get an easy 3 out of 5 ticket without trying, right? Literally 3 runs and bam, you're good. Merry Christmas, or may your Oshi tackle the Ashen Miracle. Good luck, y'all.